Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Sean Cordes. I'm a professor at the University Libraries at Western Illinois University. Calling to you from a rainy day in Illinois, so hopefully your weather is better than ours is. I want to talk for a few minutes about getting started with AI. There's a lot of people at the conference that have a lot of experience. There's some of us that don't. I started using AI in about November of 23, starting with just fun things using ChatGPT. And then I had a call to put together a research methods class. And so that kind of got me started into developing syllabi, activities, and lessons using those things. The recording has started. The conference is supported with futureofai.org, so be sure to give them a shout out whenever you can. I'm going to talk about very shortly about technical things, and then go into some practical examples. I've got about 4 or 5 examples that I've used to develop course curriculum so far. So to get started with the technical aspects, a large language model is what ChatGPT and a lot of other things run on. Now there's multimodal models now that will do images, audio, video, a lot of other things. But starting out with a large language model, it's just an algorithm that works as part of a neural network of nodes that bring context to language patterns. So this could be a spoken language, or it could be a computer language. And if you ever had to do web development as part of your job, um, things change really fast, and I've had trouble keeping up over the years because I don't do it very often. And when I do, it's always something new. So one of the things that I did with computer coding is create a parallax image where one part of the image moves faster than the other. It only took me an hour to write that code and modify it to be able to use it. So large language models check for probabilities of what words come next in a sequence, and they're trained on large amounts of data, internet data, web pages, data from reports and documents, anything that they can get their hands on. And what it does is it gives context to the AI so that it can work with transformers that take this type of data and turn it into usable outcomes. Since I started this in late November or December, working with AI, the products have just exploded. And a lot of them are already embedded inside other tools and technologies we already use. This chart was from March, so you can see Chat GPT is still number 1, but Google's Gemini is close in second now. And the influx of the way that AI is being generated, you're noticing now that predictive text is used in Gmail and chat messaging. Um, and it also finds its way into our internet searches now. So you'll see generated AI at the top of the response of a lot of Google Chrome pages and Firefox. The point I'm trying to make with this slide is that there's a lot of other types of things you could get overwhelmed very easily. So I would recommend just starting with Chat GPT or Gemini. I use Poe quite a bit, which is number 6 on this list. It has a variety of free tools that you can use, including the Llama large language model, um, Chat GPT, Stable Diffusion, and a lot of them are free. So you can do a lot of explorations with Poe there. Here's some of the places where I'm finding it popping up in everyday life, either in audio or text. Siri, Alexa, my Spotify playlists are starting to become more generated, less from friends, sharing information, sharing music, and more of being suggested. MS Office has built-in AI now for generating text and improving writing. Google Assistant, all the Netflix recommendations. And so I kind of wanted to ask here real quick in the chat, who has seen these types of things coming up that were kind of unexpected and you're just getting used to them now as they become ubiquitous. So if you've seen any types of applications or you're using applications, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll talk about them. So the way that you make sense to the AI is by giving directional skills. And these are basically called prompt crafts or prompt engineering. It's basically coming up with terms to direct the AI so it understands what outcomes you want. Honing prompt creation maximizes utility. So the first time you enter something, you might not get the response you want. You can redirect the AI using questions and examples to get a better output. And it's essential for maximizing the effectiveness of AI retrieval. Prompts require critical evaluations. Plus, the plus to this aspect is that there is now a lot of different open resources. Teaching with OpenAI from the OpenAI folks is a great place to find starter prompts. And I've got some slides, a slide at the end of the presentation that highlights some of these that you can jot down the names of them and look them up. So some of the examples of how teachers can use this, and I've used this for all of these so far, are lesson plans, explanation examples. You can have it give explanation examples and analogies at the end of lectures or introduction topics. You can create an AI tutor, and there's AI tutor bots built out there now that will guide students through a lesson topic and allow them to make improvements on their own writing or their own knowledge. Role playing and challenging conversations. This is another way that you can engage students. It's fairly easy to do. But as with all AI, you have to be careful with the outputs. So one of the examples that I did the other day just for fun was I did a debate on the Vietnam conflict between a baby boomer and a millennial. And what was interesting is the baby boomers were pro-Vietnam conflict and the millennials were not pro-Vietnam conflict. Um, but they listed the same reasons for why and why they wouldn't be based on their conversation. So the millennials thought that it wasn't a useful conflict as opposing communism. But there were a lot of people in the 60s and the baby boomers that felt the same way. The baby boomer said it was necessary to avoid global communism, but it didn't mention anything about protests in the 60s. So you have to be really care about positions and redirect the AI when it needs modification to get you the output that you want. It wasn't exactly a hallucination, but it didn't give the full perspective. Now, it's a little bit easier when you're using your own content to build quizzes and test materials. And I'm going to show an example of how you can set up a formative assessment. It reduces confusion for non-English speakers because it has a great translation factor. So speakers of Spanish can translate it into Spanish or German or Italian. It's not perfect, but it'll give them the basic information that they need. And it's also a good comparison for learning English as you can compare the two outputs. All of these things should be designed by teachers to improve critical thinking and not be a crutch for students. So there's some tips for writing prompts, and if you go into any website pretty much now about writing AI prompts, tips for writing AI prompts, you will see some of these same things. So you need to be as specific as possible about how you craft the prompt, telling the AI, the large language model, what the topic is and how the context fits into the topic you're using. Adding actions or tasks to complete help clarify these things. So always tell it something to do. Have it summarize or outline or list things, compare and predict different outcomes, and set parameters. This is something that I usually do when I go back into it, but you can do it up front. You can say, I want 100-word introduction, or I want a short paragraph. And if it comes out too long, you can modify that. You can also tell it, I liked your first 5 points, but I didn't like 5 through 10. So exclude 5 through 10 and relist the first 5 points. It's an iterative approach that you have to take to be able to refine the outputs for getting the best information that you can out of it. And it also helps you avoid bias. So you never trust what's coming out of it initially. So I'm going to look just for a second and see what we have in the chat. Yeah, you would have to know about it or do background research. So someone said, don't ask the AI anything you don't already know about. Um, if you know part of it and you don't know the whole story, definitely take into account other perspectives. Instagram asks Meta AI anything, Spotify's AGIG. So you can see that it's becoming ubiquitous in everything. It's catching up with us, even if we're not catching up with it. So it helps to build a good relationship with the AI. And you can talk to it like a person. One of the examples is Talkify, AI emotional chatbots or friend chatbots. Um, talk to it like a person and it will respond generally like a person as well. And the more you talk to it in natural language, the more it's going to be able to adjust to it. It helps to give it an identity. So when I'm doing things for classes, I'll tell it, I'm an experienced information science professor teaching an introductory information literacy course or teaching an introductory course to instructional design. So I'll set that stage and provide context for students and give examples and steps of how I want the AI to process the information that I'm looking for. A lot of times I'll have to go back and adjust, tell it to make things shorter, clarify things, expound on examples. And as for justification and support, it's harder to do this, I think, with some of the older models that are free, but a lot of the online things like Gemini and Copilot are able to pull in references from the internet that you can follow up on and check. And don't be afraid to play an experiment. Um, before I did anything for any courses that I've worked on, I did a lot of examples just for myself. I had it write haikus. I had it predict the weather for me. I'll show an example of how I wrote a review for Amazon here in just a second. You can always correct and clarify prompts based on how the AI answered. And if it's not understanding you, you can readjust it and realign it. And sometimes it just fails. It's going to give you answers that are nonsensical. It will give you answers like in the Vietnam debate where you're not getting all the perspectives. So keep willing to try, but also be able to give up and try a different tool. A lot of times different chatbots, different AIs models will give you different answers back. And sometimes you can cross-reference them to see how close it is to the actual information that you're looking for and to make sure that you're not missing anything. So here's an example that I ran in ChatGTP. Acting like an experienced marathon runner, write a one-page paragraph of a running shoe for the Adidas Supernova shoe, which was one of my favorites when I ran a lot more than I'm doing now. I asked it to include the following areas in this review: the distance the shoes designed to run, the durability, the weight, and the cushioning. And I also wanted to list other shoes in the same class from other companies. So I wanted it to give 3 key reasons why the Supernova from Adidas is better and list them as bullet points and then give me a rating that I could use for Amazon. Now I've used these shoes before, and I'm pretty familiar with this class of products. So in addition, there's a lot of different reviews online. So I was able to look up and compare and contrast the AI's output to what other people have said on the internet doing similar reviews. And this is basically what I got back. There's no way we can read through this whole thing, but I want to point out some of the highlights so that you can see that it included things. So it gave me an introduction, told me that for beginning runners, this is a great shoe for conquering your first marathon. It's durable, it's light, it gives cushioning, and these are the 3 things that it chose to show that it's better in its class than its other competitors. it listed in the same class other notable options. So the Brooks Ghost, New Balance Fresh Foam, and the Air Zoom Pegasus. But the Supernova beats it by my 3 listed points of why it's better. And it included it in bullet points. So the construction and durability, it's lightweight to reduce fatigue, and it has great balance of cushioning for support and absorption while it still gets you down the road. It gave it a 5 out of 5 rating for exceptional performance, durability, and comfort. Now, I went out and ran this on another chat bot in Poe. At that time, it was Sage. It came up with similar responses, but it didn't list everything in the order that I told ChatGTP to, and it didn't give me the 1, 2, 3 list of um, the shoe's notable characteristics. When I went and looked at other reviews for the shoes, I found that it was very good at identifying its competitor shoes. It was very good at identifying the 3 components here that make it stand out. And it was also pretty good at giving a review overall rating. So a couple of them gave 4 out of 5, but most of them did give it a 5 out of 5. So all in all, just as a fun example for writing an Amazon review, GPT did a really good job. But when it doesn't, and it gave me all of that back in one prompt. So it worked really well in getting me what I wanted, but it's not always that way. So I'm going to show an example now of what a teacher would do to help guide the AI. And so I set the stage here by saying I was an experienced teacher that could give clear examples. And I want the AI to ask me 2 questions before going forward. The concept that I want to explain for this lecture, and the audience for the explanation. And this is how you can kind of fine tune things, particularly with the audience example. You can have a beginning audience, a college level audience, a master's degree audience. And I want it to wait to answer before it asks me the second question. So then I said, look up the concept and examples, give a multi-paragraph example using 2 specific examples and 5 analogies for each point. And I'm not going to show the whole thing here, but at the top of the screen, you'll see this is the first part of the prompt. And you can see ChatGPT respond, sure, what concept would you like me to explain? And I said information literacy. And it waits, and then it asks, who's the audience? And the audience was first-year college students. So this is a way that you can break it down question by question. And I'll tell you, I had difficulty when I first started doing this process, getting it to subdivide the questions. A lot of times it would just ask me off the whole slew of questions at once. Other times it would ask me one question and then use the other questions as part of the introduction. It took some crafting to be able to get it to ask me a question, then a second question, and then continue. So after that, it will delve into a concept of information literacy for first-year students. So this is just kind of how you can get the chat bot to be able to understand the order that you want things and to make sure it doesn't leave anything out of the process. Another examples that I used, and I did this for my research methods course that I'm teaching this summer, was to act like an information science professor and write a list of objectives for the introductory modules. This is a 1 module course. So I'm doing an introductory course and I want a concise list of 4 objectives. And I kind of based this on another class that I'd had and used the syllabus for that and kind of modeled it with the same syllabus that I had to make sure I was including everything. And I want an example of each of the objectives in libraries because I'm teaching this to a library audience, library students, in particular master's degree students. Add a brief 25-word introduction to the course and complete the steps. So I wanted to write the introduction and list the objectives and examples. And here's what it gave me back. So understand principles of instructional design and library concepts. Good. Because I'm not doing instructional design in business or an educational setting. In general, I'm doing it specifically for library context. So we'll look at various instructional design models like the ADDIE model to create impactful instruction programs. We're going to use a user-centered approach. select and implement appropriate instructional strategies, and evaluate and approve library instruction programs. So you can see for each one of this, it was kind enough to give me a logical example for each one. And I can include these examples to give more context to students about what they'll be learning with the objectives. Another one that I've done is generating content with directions. So in this case, again, I'm an information science professor and I want a paragraph about why it's important for my introduction. I'm going to tell it to write engaging but smart, right? So it motivates students as well as gives them the information and hopefully in a more easygoing manner that they'll be able to embrace. The following points, and this is a good way so that you can follow the chatbot through the process and have it do one thing at a time so that you can evaluate its progress. So the first thing I asked it to do was outline the paragraph. Then I asked it to improve the outline and add some more context and content, and then write the paragraph out in a full, complete sentence. And so here's the result for that. So it gave me an introduction and the learning objectives, 1 through 4, as I had requested it to do, as it had given before, and then it improved the outline. So in the introduction, you can see in the clear objectives, the instructional strategies, it added a little more detail. And then it follows up by giving us why it's important to use instructional design in libraries specifically. For enhancing learning experiences and engaging patrons effectively, it uses libraries terminology without me having to tell it. It knows that libraries has patrons. It gave me clear measurable objectives, and it helped align these objectives with strategies in the library for optimizing education. The final example I kind of want to give is a prompt for generating formative assessments so that you can find out how students are doing throughout the lesson. So I'm a quiz creator here of diagnostic quizzes and formative assessments, and I want it to look up low stakes tests and diagnostics because it's another term for formative assessments, and I want to make sure that it recognizes both of those. And then it's going to tell the students why formative assessment is important. And then it's going to generate a multiple choice quiz for me so that I can determine whether students are keeping track with the lesson up to that point and what challenges they might be having and how that I can mediate those challenges and improve learning. I want these questions to be relevant and go beyond facts. They need to be plausible. There needs to be alternate responses with no all of the above and an answer key. And another thing I could do, I could have it give examples of correct and incorrect answers just as easily as I asked it to do this. And so I'm just going to show the quiz here. This is what it came up with. And it gives me 4 pretty good questions based on the objectives. So what describes information literacy, things to consider when evaluating information, what a primary source is, and how plagiarism is defined. And you can see at the bottom, it gives me an answer key. So all of this, I've learned pretty much informally and by using the suggested resources at the end. There's a real good one on there, a short four-part, I think, four-part video tutorial on YouTube that was extremely helpful in developing these first prompts. How do we live well with AI in the classroom? Well, first of all, like we looked at the different ways that it's popping up ubiquitously throughout everyday life, we have to address the fact that these tools are going to be part of education and we need to teach responsible use as instructors and teach students how to use it responsibly in academics and in everyday life. Encourage students to use hands-on exploration. You can use it in class to come up with answers, to compare answers that students have come up with to the AI, and also compare them with the instructors. You can assign tasks for students to use to experiment with AI and share experiences. And most universities, I teach at 2 schools at Western Illinois and also at Wayne State in Detroit. So both of these are coming up with ways that you can incorporate how you're going to use AI in the classroom by embedding it in your syllabus. There's a lot of other university-wide committees and programs that are coming up to address this. Hopefully we'll be able to get there before it comes on us too fast. Teach questioning skills. So learning to ask the AI question is also a good way to learn to ask questions face to face too, or through other communication with humans. Critique your own questions and add AI generated responses, and foster curiosity and excitement for follow-up questions. So that's kind of why when I started, I did things for fun. Like I did reviews for Amazon and wrote those for shoes and books and other products. Use it to guide information and creativity, and review assignments to promote critical thinking and problem solving skills rather than relying on it for answers. And that's where comparative techniques and guiding the AI and following up to make sure that it jives with other examples is a good way to explore it. These are the resources that I use to get started. I'll tell you the top one, OpenAI Teaching with AI is a great place to find prompts. It's got it broken down in everything from generating classroom content to doing administrative tasks and automating those. If you want to get started, it's got full prompts that you can use and go in and modify. And the practical resources for instructors video series on YouTube was the other one that I was talking about. That one was indispensable because I could rewatch it, especially when I did the interactive conversation with AI. That's where I learned how to do that one. So I'm going to open up the chat. We'll review things. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask them now, and we'll finish up here. I appreciate your time and everybody coming out, and hopefully you got some useful information out of this. I still consider myself a neophyte because every time I get a grasp on one thing, I'm moving on to another. So video is the next thing that I'm working on, and we'll see how that goes. I hope you find ways to embrace AI in your work the best you can, and if not, know that it's going to be part of the work environment for years to come. So are there any questions right now? Thanks for everybody coming out. I'll go ahead and turn the room over and I'm going to leave. Bye.